37th President of the United States, Richard Milhous Nixon, was sworn into office on January 20th, 1969. Initially, he continued to escalate American involvement in Vietnam, but by 1973, it was clear that the U.S. troops needed to be withdrawn as the North Vietnamese army overtook the Republic of Vietnam. The defeat was a blow to Nixon, who had made a name for himself as a fierce anti-communist. In the summer of 1969, Nixon was granted a victory over the Soviets when the United States became the first country to land a man on the moon. On July 20th, 1969, the decade-long effort finally saw a conclusion as Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the lunar surface. President Nixon spoke to the men during their historic walk.
And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made from the White House. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you have done. For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world, I am sure that they too join with Americans in recognizing what an immense feat this is. Because of what you have done, the heavens have become a part of man's world. And as you talk to us from the sea of tranquility, it inspires us to redouble our efforts to bring peace and tranquility to earth. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one.
During his presidency, Nixon was responsible for ending another Cold War stalemate by opening diplomatic and trade relations with the People's Republic of China in 1972 and signed the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty with the Soviet Union the same year. In America, Nixon generally favored federal policy that returned governing and legislative power to the states, took initiative to fight cancer and illegal drugs, and put into place environmental reforms and enforced the desegregation of public schools. When he was re-elected in 1972, the centerpiece of Nixon's second term in office became the president's involvement in the Watergate scandal. On June 17, 1972, 5 men were arrested for breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters located in the Watergate office complex in Washington. The arrests soon unleashed a tide of unsavory information, as illegal practices such as burglary and wiretaps were found to have been perpetrated against the Democratic Party by Nixon's aides and advisors. The attempts at cover-up of the shady operations only damned the president further.
I want to say this to the television audience. I made my mistakes, but in all of my years of public life, I have never profited from public service. I've earned every cent. And in all of my years of public life, I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I can say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Several of Nixon's top aides were tried and jailed, and as it looked inevitable that the House of Representatives would vote to impeach the president, and just as strong a possibility in the Senate, Richard Nixon resigned from the office of the president on August 9th, 1974. He remains the only American president to resign his post.
In any organization, the man at the top must bear the responsibility. That responsibility, therefore, belongs here, in this office. I accept it. And I pledge to you tonight from this office that I will do everything in my power to ensure that the guilty are brought to justice and that such abuses are purged from our political processes in the years to come, long after I have left this office.
Gerald Ford became the 38th President of the United States on August 9th, 1974, after Richard Nixon's resignation. He was the first president to have been appointed vice president under the terms of the 25th Amendment after Spiro Agnew's resignation, as well as the first, and to date the only person to have served as vice president and president without having been elected by the Electoral College. Ford was a 25-year veteran of the House of Representatives, serving Michigan's 5th Congressional District. He spent 8 of those years as House Minority Leader. Ford also served in the Navy during World War II on the USS Monterey and supported landings in the Pacific Theater such as those at Kwajalein and Enwitak, as well as strikes in the Philippines. As Ford assumed the presidency after his long career in the House of Representatives, he had the unfortunate task of presiding over the worst economic and military periods the country ever faced. Inflation led to a recession, and North Vietnam's conquest of South Vietnam brought U.S. involvement in that conflict to a bitter end. Making progress towards ending the Cold War, Ford signed the Helsinki Accords, an attempt to end the hostilities and improve relations between the communist bloc and the Western world. While the USA, Canada, and most European countries signed the accords, they were not binding, as they did not have treaty status. Perhaps Ford's most controversial act as president was to issue a presidential pardon to Richard Nixon for his involvement in the Watergate scandal. Ford narrowly beat out Ronald Reagan for the Republican nomination in 1976, but he would not serve a full term as president. He lost in 1976 to Democrat Jimmy Carter. His term in office, lasting just 895 days, remains the shortest served by any president who did not die in office. However, Ford also remains the president who lived the longest, passing away on December 26, 2006, at the age of 93. 39th President Jimmy Carter successfully ran for president in 1976 as an outsider. While he had served in the Georgia State Senate and later as governor of that state, his image was that of a politician distant from Washington, which had been seemingly exposed as a corrupt and inept institution, thanks to the scandals of President Nixon and the inefficiencies of President Ford. The country still languished in an economic decline, but Carter, a former naval officer who once oversaw a cleanup of a nuclear meltdown at Canada's Chalk River laboratories, even donning radiation gear and participating in the repairs himself, made energy and education his priorities while in office. But because of his history with nuclear reactors, Carter did not pursue new development in nuclear weapons or energy. He established 2 new departments in the presidential cabinet: the Department of Energy and the Department of Education. His national energy policy included conservation and research and development of new technologies, such as solar power, even installing a set of solar water heating panels on the White House. His foreign policy aimed at restoring peace to the Middle East and other areas, helping Egypt and Israel reach an accord at Camp David in 1978. Carter witnessed the signing of agreements by Egyptian President Anwar el-Sadat and Israel Prime Minister Menachem Begin, which led to the Egypt-Israel Peace Treaty the following year. While the agreements netted Sadat and Begin a shared Nobel Peace Prize, one of the agreements, dealing with the Palestinian territories, was written and signed without that people's participation. Carter's work in office failed to bring about any economic recovery, and his foreign policies were but small steps towards the ending of both domestic and international inflation and depression. In the last 2 years of Carter's only term, a hailstorm of crises, both at home and abroad, tainted his presidential legacy. The years of 1979 through 1981 saw the Iran hostage crisis, the energy crisis of 1979, the partial nuclear meltdown at 3 Mile Island, the Soviet invasion in Afghanistan, the U.S. boycott of the 1980 Summer Olympics in Moscow, and finally, the 1980 volcanic eruption at Mount St. Helens in Washington state. After leaving office in 1981, Carter remained active in civic duty. A key figure in Habitat for Humanity, which uses volunteer aid to build homes for the needy all across the globe, as well as the Carter Center, a nonprofit, non-government organization that works to advocate for human rights and helps to eradicate disease. For his work through the Carter Center, Jimmy Carter was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002 for his work to find peaceful solutions to international conflicts, to advance democracy and human rights, and to promote economic and social development. Carter remains the only president to receive this prize after his term in office.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.